This is Lightning Power Lunch, presented by Reef Rum on the Lightning Audio Network with Dave Mishkin and Greg Linnelli.
No stress for some reason right now. I honestly can't even tell you much why. It's just kind of when everyone's buying into their role and their job every time they step on the ice, it makes it pretty easy for the goals to go in the net, and especially when you're playing good defense and you got Vasi kicking. I mean, there's so many saves he makes that gives us confidence, and so many defensive plays that gives us offense. Like I said, I can't pinpoint one thing. It's pretty impressive from all the guys on the ice.
Brandon Hagel?
Yes.
Feeling it right there?
Steve has been milking that one soundbite. And that's a different soundbite, but it was the same conversation. So good thing that Brandon Hagel was in a talkative mood after
I feel like Hagel...
the game on Tuesday.
Is Hagel kind of the go-to quote in many ways?
He's pretty honest.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I think a number of the Lightning guys are pretty honest, though.
I just remember Hagel, the one... the one soundbite was, I mean, he basically confirmed what you and I think everybody else looks at when you're watching sports. You get up for the good teams and some of the teams that are out there. I mean, he basically confirmed that. And, look, what's funny is a lot of pundits, a lot of fans want athletes and coaches to speak their mind, because oftentimes you get cliches, and so it gets boring. But then when an athlete says something and you find it offensive, he shouldn't say anything. I mean, look, either you want these guys to be somewhat real, or you just want them to be robots and spew out whatever it is that they're going to say at that particular time. I tend, I don't know where you come down on it. I appreciate the honesty. I think if you're an athlete, you just got to understand, if I'm pretty honest, it's probably going to ruffle a lot more feathers than if I just kind of do status quo.
Well, they had the situation in Ottawa, right? After a tough home loss. I think it was at home. Interviewers went to Jake Sanderson, who by any measure of what you hear about Jake Sanderson is just a stand-up guy, great teammate, great player. And he basically had an offhanded comment like, it'd be nice if our goalie made more than 10 saves. Merrilainen, who's in because Linus Ullmark is dealing with a mental health issue, which is another story. And I mean, we can even talk about that because Victor Hedman is actually the guy that Ullmark mentioned as somebody who reached out and was a great support to him.
Yeah.
Which tied into the mental health awareness. I know it wasn't called that. The Hockey Talks night that the Lightning had on Tuesday. So it kind of fit together in terms of a story. But the reason why Merrilainen was in the net was that Ullmark has taken a leave of absence. Right. And Jake Sanderson later apologized. But, in the heat of the moment, I mean, the honesty that you're talking about is not always like cutting down a teammate, with a microphone in front of you. But at the very least, speaking honestly about your team's performance. I thought it was actually interesting what we heard from Julie Stewart-Binks yesterday, who has a lot more experience, certainly, than I do, doing these sorts of interviews. I do some of them. I don't do a lot of them. I don't have as much experience as the sideline people who are doing, 2, 3, 4 in a game, right? And they have to be short. They have to be to the point, and maybe even more than that if you're including questions they might be asking at morning skate, post-game, whatever. And what she said was, when you start with a leading point in a question, and she really said the coach, but it might be the player too, but it's probably more the coach. The coach tends to veer to neutral. That was interesting when she said that. So if you're like, you guys had a rough first period, why was that? The coach might say, well, it really wasn't that bad. Or, you guys did really well in that first period.
Yeah.
What was working for you? Well, so that's what she said ESPN kind of taught her to be ready for and to kind of try and work around that in terms of the question that you ask. Now, I was thinking about that. I'm like, I ask questions like that a lot because I'm getting an assistant coach after the first period. So usually one of the questions I'm asking is like, what just happened in the first period? And if it was a good first period for the Lightning, I kind of say like, what was working for you? If they had a rough spot, I'm like, what needs to change here? And I have to give our assistant coaches credit because I don't get the neutral. If I'm like, look, their forecheck was really giving you problems in that first period, what do you need to do to address that? And they're like, yeah, we need to be clean. Like, maybe it's a difference between a head coach and assistant coach. I don't know. And also, if you're like, boy, the Lightning are really passing the puck well in that first period, like what was happening there? And they're like, yes, we were tape to tape. We were where we needed to be. So they usually don't veer to the neutral. They kind of feed off of what I'm seeing. And if I'm not seeing it the same way, then they'll push back. But, usually if the Lightning have a good first period, they'll say that. If they have not such a good first period, they'll say, we need to make these adjustments. So credit to the assistant coaches who come on after the first period. But that's really like, I'll ask Coop the odd question in a morning skate, but like I just don't ask as many questions as people who are in a different role. So it was interesting when she said that, which is a little different what you were talking about in terms of the honesty.
Yeah.
But it's like the brain is almost like, I'm going to push back against your premise a little bit and then kind of give you an answer that has been washed and cleaned and dried and then, presented to you in maybe a little different way, not quite as raw,
I think also, too, with interviews, I've had to do some in the locker room, particularly football, which can have the same type of emotional sensitivity, particularly after a game. You ever go into a locker room for a football game after a team loses?
Yeah.
It's a tough place to be because you're seeing the raw emotion, and there you are as the reporter, affiliated with a team, but you're either speaking to the head coach or you're speaking to a player. So you understand there is an art to it. I think you have to read the room a little bit as well. I mean, you can kind of know which questions are going to set a coach off or a player.
Right.
Particularly after a bad loss or a tough loss. And sometimes there's no way around it. Coach, your team played well, came up short. What'd you think about the game? Yeah, that may seem like to somebody listening, a dumb question, but what are you going to ask?
Right. And Julie said that too. Yeah. Like you have to guard against trying to show off your own knowledge.
100%.
People are like, well, why did you ask such a basic question? And what she said was sometimes the most basic questions get you the best answers.
100% true.
Yeah.
And look, sometimes you need context with the question. I get that. Everybody does it. But simple is better for a couple of reasons. And I think the first one, the longer you talk, the more chance you're going to sound maybe not the way you want to come off either.
Right.
Like limit what you're going to say. Try and get it right to the point. Coach, the Sabres really pushed back in the third period. What happened? Well, okay. I mean,
yeah.
Something like that. Or your team really came out strong in the first period, dipped a little in the second. What was the difference? There's no way to really massage that question, but it has to be asked because you're watching the game. You want to sound knowledgeable, but you also don't want to break it down X's and O's. I'm going to give you the floor. What are you going to say? And, look, some coaches, I think Coop's good. Some coaches are really good at that. They understand it's part of the job.
Yeah.
Some aren't.
Some are less experienced.
Sutter in Calgary?
Yeah, he had experience. He just...
He
had too much experience, maybe.
That would be tough. I mean, he'd say, no.
Well, you say in Calgary, like he was in LA too.
He was in LA too, right?
He had some really good teams there.
Yeah, for sure. So it's I don't know, and I know we're kind of going down a rabbit hole, but this is the last thing I'll say about this, and we can get some questions, and we have a guest coming up too.
Yeah, John Wiedeman will join us bottom of the hour.
I think because of TV, the in-between media timeouts, interviews, the walk-off interviews. Personally, I feel for the reporter or the broadcaster because I don't know if you're getting much there. It's more theatrics, in my opinion.
And it sometimes depends on the coach, too.
That is true. But...
Rod Brindamore has no filter. So, I mean, I've seen enough of these Carolina playoff games where they're doing that, and he speaks the truth.
He's
pretty straightforward. So
that's
probably
fair.
the national people are like doing a little happy dance when they know that Carolina's on the schedule and
FKA,
they can ask him a question, but other coaches are not quite as forthcoming, right?
You know, most of them get it. The other thing, too, is most of these guys, when they're done coaching, they go into the media. And I'm not saying they're the ones asking the questions in between the break, but I think there should be a better understanding of just how this partnership plays out today.
Mm-hmm.
FKA says, anyone who had to interview Tortorella has my sympathies. But then you would hear people who would say Tortorella at times was great.
Yeah, he had a short fuse if he didn't like the question or if he didn't feel the question was worthy of being asked. You know? So Eric, who was on a beat, actually back when we had 2 newspapers that produced print editions every day, like we had 2 beat writers who were at every game. Eric covered the Lightning for the Tampa Tribune. And for much of the time that I was with the Lightning, from the time I arrived until this gentleman moved on, it was Damian Cristodero who covered the Lightning for the St. Pete Times, which then became the Tampa Bay Times. Now it's Ed Encina. We've had other people as well. Tom Jones had the beat for a bit as well. But for much of the time that Tortorella was the head coach, it was Eric and Damian, and they would kind of look at each other, who's going to ask the first question? Because sometimes you needed to get through the first question. So Torts would answer a question that he deemed appropriate. Maybe appropriate's the wrong word. He deemed worthy of being answered. If somebody came at him with talk about the game, he would actually come back and say, ask me a question. So what Eric and Damian both said to me independently and together is like having Tortorella as the head coach forced them to raise their game in terms of questions asked. Sure, was he in a better mood after a win than a loss? Absolutely.
Right.
But you had to go into it knowing that he could have a short fuse, but it would burn out. Like, you know, he didn't carry grudges about it, which is in the moment. He was such a fiery competitor that when his team lost a game and he wasn't happy with what happened, he might erupt. And so those are those viral moments. But the eruptions didn't happen that often. They really didn't. It's just when they happened, they were noteworthy, right?
It's amazing.
But yes, I mean, I know that when I asked Torts a question, I was like, I better think about what I'm going to ask here. I mean, I do that anyway. But
you do that, but even more
you know, you want to make sure that you're asking something that he would want to answer. That's kind of the best way to put it. Because you know, if you ask something that he just felt was a ridiculous statement or just not a well-framed question or even a question at all, talk about the game.
I always like the one where you
talk about the game is give me something that I can put in a quote.
Yes.
But I'm not actually going to like ask a question.
These are always the good ones. Coach, the power play wasn't working tonight. It felt like the Panthers maybe were getting in a lot of lanes. What was the difference there? Oh, you saw it. You just answered the question.
Yeah.
Like, you know, that's like, all right, well.
That's to Julie's point. Yeah. You don't need to show that you know so much, right?
Yeah, right. But you could say, Coach, the power play was struggling. What was the difference in this game?
Yeah. I'm not a very skilled interviewer. I'm not. I mean, people who hear this show,
I think
when we have a guest, I tend
capable.
to ask long questions, right? This format's a little different. You know, people are here, they understand it. Anyway, I did ask the question of Kucherov, though, in the preseason, the first day of camp, about the power play. And I'm almost glad that I asked the question the way I usually do, which is, you know, providing some context, because I framed it as last year's power play was 5th in the NHL, and you did it without Stamkos. Like, how did you manage that? That was kind of the question. But I didn't just say, like, what worked for the power play last year, because it was an important distinction, I thought, to make with the taking the Stamkos element out. And Kuch was like, yes, we didn't have Stamkos. Like, and that's when he went into our power play percentage was better against the bad penalty kill teams and not as good against the top penalty kill teams. And I don't care what we did in the regular season, we stank in the playoffs. I mean, I'm paraphrasing.
Wait, that was from your question?
I asked the question.
Because that got a lot of legs.
It got a lot of legs.
Yeah, it got a lot of legs.
But I asked the question the way I normally ask, which is probably too much talking before I actually asked the question. I mean, it's not like I went on for 45 seconds, but you know what I mean? Like, I included the Stamkos part because I thought that was interesting, that it seemed like they did well, percentage-wise, but it points, and the other thing was like they were experimenting, right? Much of last year, they tried Radish at the left circle. They tried Chafee at the left circle. They put Kucherov at the left circle. They tried Point at the left circle. They had a lot of different looks on a power play that did finish 5th in the NHL. So that's curious, but they were looking because they pulled Stamkos off of that unit. I mean, you know what I mean? Like Stamkos wasn't there anymore. So, by the way, congratulations to Stamkos. He's really turned things around in Nashville. He had a hat trick last night. They were down 3-0 late second to Ottawa, and they came back, and the Stammer had a hat trick. He had 2 power play goals on the winner late in the third. They scored 4 in the third. He scored 1 late in the second to make it 3-1, and they scored 4 in the third with an empty netter. But his goal, the non-power play goal, was the winner in the last 90 seconds. They handed Ottawa a regulation loss in a game the Sens were up 3-0 with 2 minutes left in the second period. They need to make up ground. Ottawa, I'm talking about. That is a terrible loss for the Senators. Anyway, Kucherov addressed the absence of Stamkos and didn't just say yeah, we did okay last year. He gave us more. So you never know. You never know what you're going to get.
Sure.
Depending, because most of the time when you ask Kucherov a question, he gives short answers. We see after a game. They don't have him do a lot of media. But when he does media, he's succinct, right? He's pretty succinct with his answers. That one he wasn't. So
there's no doubt about that. It's just always, it's interesting because it's in our space. The interviews and how players react, coaches react is always telling in many ways. Game tonight.
Yeah, so I just actually want to mention, because
yes,
I did not realize the Hawks played last night in Carolina, and they're losing an hour coming home because this is last night was an ESPN game.
So you're saying
this game is 7 o'clock Eastern. It's 6 o'clock Central. I can tell you, I've never made the trip from Raleigh to Chicago in a back-to-back. To the best of my knowledge, the Lightning have never had those two teams in a back-to-back. But I can tell you, that is not sunrise to Tampa. It's not. So, plus, while Chicago has avoided, I think, the worst of the snowstorm, Columbus is getting it. So this may be an interesting travel weekend for the Lightning. It is, and I talked to John Wiedeman shortly before we went on the air. He said it was minus 20, something like that in Chicago. So I said when the plane landed, were the cars running? Because that's what they do in the really cold cities. Because you land, it's the middle of the night. And the crew will actually go in and turn on the cars. So they're running. When you get into it, the heat works. You have to warm up the car. You can just drive away. He's like, yeah, I have some car issues, so mine wasn't. That was my own fault. He's like, the players' cars are running. I heard that from Jack Michaels, actually. Edmonton does that regularly because when the Oilers are coming home in January, you know what the weather is like in Edmonton, right? Mm-hmm. So the cars are running. So this is a brutal back-to-back for Chicago. And it took them 6 rounds into the shootout last night. So they won. Who knows what will happen? But this is an advantage for the Lightning. Tomorrow night, no. Columbus will be the rested team. Tonight, the Lightning are the rested team. Hawks have played the Lightning well, though. Since Bedard entered the NHL, I want to say that the road team has won the last 5 games. This is Bedard's 3rd season. So the Lightning have seen Bedard in 5 games. They've won both games in Chicago. They've lost all 3 in Tampa, including the one earlier this year. The 2 wins in Chicago were not easy wins. One, they had to score late in the third to win. Yeah. Tie game. And these Chicago teams are way down in the standings, missing the playoffs, one of the worst records in the NHL, but they played the Lightning well in Chicago. Last year, the Lightning needed a 6th attacker goal with a power play. It was a 6-on-4 in the last minute to get the game tied, and then the Hawks took another penalty. Late in regulation, Kucherov scored in overtime. Gensel got the tying goal. And the 2 games that the Hawks played against the Lightning last year that kind of pull a rabbit out of that win the Lightning had in Chicago, and then 4 days later, the teams met in Tampa and Chicago won. Arvid Soderblom was the goalie. Soderblom played very well in both those games. He had 37 saves in the overtime loss. Lightning outshot the Blackhawks 17-1 in the third period. They were down 3-2 going into the third. And it took basically the last minute. They got the game tied. And then Soderblom got the win against the Lightning in Tampa. So with Spencer Knight playing last night, Soderblom for sure is in tonight. So they're going to see this guy. He didn't play in the first meeting because Knight played. That game where Donato scored in the last minute. That was the 7th game of the year for the Lightning, the one that dropped them to 2-4-1. Or 1-4-2, I'm sorry. And then they got going in the game after that. I actually liked the way they played in that game. I know I've said that numerous times. They had a bit of a break. I think they had 3 full days of practice before they hosted the Hawks, and they played a lot better, but they made a critical mistake in the last minute of regulation. And it was an odd man. And
Donato had a rebound. Couple goals, right?
He had an open net. He had 2 goals in the game. Yeah. They're getting healthy or healthier. We mentioned Bedard and his injury and how it affected the Hawks. So I do have the info on that. He missed 12 games. He came back and played 2 and then missed 1 more. Yeah. He's played ever since. So really it was the 12 games. So the game in which he was injured was a loss. He got injured on literally a last-second face-off. They were down by 1 to St. Louis. It was a face-off in the offensive zone. Bedard was trying to dig in on the face-off, and whatever happened, he hurt his shoulder. I mean, I think I read he separated. If you missed 12 games with a separated shoulder, it was not a major separation, but it was bad enough. He missed a month. So remember, Blashill was saying Bedard should be on the Olympic team, in his opinion. He's like, I understand there's a lot of competition, but look at where we have gone since he's been out of the lineup. So 12 games he missed. The first 8, they won only 1 game. They went 1-6-1. But then they won the last 4 before he came back. Then he came back, played a couple, got hurt, came back. They're trying to figure it out. They're winning some, they're losing some. They're in the mix. They're going to need to have a very good final 30-plus games, I think, to get in, or hope that some teams really drop off that are ahead of them. But they are much closer to getting in the playoffs 50 games in this year than they were either of Bedard's first 2 years. So Bedard is back. The other guy who's played very well against the Lightning and had a goal in the first meeting, he missed 14 games, and that's Frank Nazar. Nazar had a broken jaw. He just came back, played his first game back after missing the 14 last night. So they have Nazar healthy. They have Bedard healthy. They're getting there, right?
We have John.
Look, there's John.
So we have John Wiedeman.
Teed it up. Well, we have nice.
I did. Should I take him off stage? He wasn't there yet.
He told me he was driving home and he was gonna log
He heard us talking and he was like, you know what? I got a minute here.
Long time broadcaster with the Hawks. So people have been like, how long have you been with the Lightning? I'm like, I have been with the Lightning a while, but John Wiedeman has been in the NHL longer than me because he was in Philadelphia, and then he went to the Islanders. He's been with the Blackhawks. I have to ask. I think he got there right as they started winning their cups. His first year with the Hawks might have been the year that Taves was a rookie. He'll tell us. He arrived right as Taves and Kane arrived. He can talk about that ovation Taves got too, which was fantastic.
When he gets in, I'll put him back on the stage.
He was probably checking to make sure he could get on. We saw his sofa, so he's going to get set up.
Chris says, "Power lunch, world's greatest lunch." I hear you. Tampa Bay says Stammer is doing everything he can on the ice to come back here.
Right now, his focus is on trying to get Nashville in the playoffs. And they've had a nice recovery after a very bad start.
What else do we have? There we go. This is a question. Vlad says, do you think Tampa needs to strengthen its roster, namely add some muscle in the context of a possible confrontation with Florida and Carolina?
Strengthen as in physical strength? I mean, they have Curtis Douglas, who is available. And
Let's
they
say
have Sabarin, who is still injured, but still available. I don't know that the Lightning would need quote-unquote muscle against Carolina. Carolina will rough it up as necessary. Like Alexander Nikishin had a fight with Oliver Moore last night.
Yeah.
He easily dropped Moore. Moore ended up, it was his birthday, Moore's birthday yesterday, and he scored the shootout winner. So he had an assist, he had a fight, and he had a shootout goal. I don't think that qualifies as a Gordie Howe hat trick.
What do we call that?
Gordie Howe I don't know what Gordie Howe's opinion would have been of the shootout, but I think Gordie Howe was still alive when they brought the shootout in. But it was a memorable night for Moore. But Nikishin is pretty tough. I don't know if he's had a lot of fights, but I saw that fight and he basically dropped Moore. Yeah. with a big punch. But I don't think that's Carolina's DNA, really.
If we're
they
not
just play hard.
If we're not taking strengthen literally as in physical, and you're looking in terms of making the team better, I think you and I have discussed face-offs.
Yeah.
Face-offs. But that has
We've talked about that a lot.
That has to mesh with the team,
right?
The structure too, because be hard-pressed to take somebody out of the lineup. Now, could you find somebody to do it? For sure. If you end up getting a guy in the top 6 role who can win faceoffs, you are going to find a way to make that work on your team. There's no question about it. And if that means somebody who's been playing well has to sit in favor of somebody who's a pretty accomplished player, that's just sometimes how it goes.
Right.
But those are hard to get, and you and I have talked about that. You're probably giving up something, probably on your current roster, to get that player. So there's those dynamics that you have to.
Hockey is a sport where a specialist, like the specialist, is hard to be just a player who specializes in one thing and that's it. Baseball will use an example. A team can add a left-handed middle reliever for specific game situations. They're like, we need this lefty in here to get this one guy out. We can bring him in. Hopefully he gets the job done against another lefty, and then we can take him out. Doesn't really work that way in hockey, right? Like you're taking a roster. I mean, I guess the left-handed relief pitcher is taking a roster spot too, but that centerman is going to be asked to win some faceoffs, but do more than that. Not just win the faceoff. They have to be able to do other stuff too. And that's where hockey is different in this one regard. Like you can get a pinch hitter, let's say. You can choose when to put that pinch hitter in and utilize the pinch hitter for the strength of that player and isolate it. It's harder to isolate a specialty in hockey because as good as the faceoff guy is, he might lose the draw. And then what's going to happen? And when it's not just faceoffs. Like the player has to play. I mean, even the players that don't play a lot are playing multiple shifts in a game. They have to do other stuff besides win faceoffs. Anyway.
Yeah, long are typically the enforcers who are playing 2 minutes a game, which we sometimes see. All right. I think John is ready. Do we have John?
Well, and the question was about Florida. The Lightning have one game left against Florida. It's coming up. It's the last game for the teams before the Olympic break. They may not play Florida again. I'm not making any bold prediction here. I mean, both teams might get into the playoffs. They may not meet. The Panthers might miss the playoffs. I mean, I'm not stating anything. I'm not saying they're going to miss the playoffs. Just
Lightning
look at where
broadcaster says
no. I mean, they might. They're going to have to. They're going to have a very good push down the stretch, and they're going to have to do a lot of heavy lifting on the road, which we've talked about.
I would agree.
Yeah.
All right, Steve. I think we have John. Should I bring him in? Let's do it. John.
Good morning, guys.
Are you staying warm?
Yeah, if you'll indulge me 1 second, I'm going to turn my computer so that you can see what 10 degrees below zero looks like outside. I don't know if it's a big blur to you, but that's outside my house here in Winfield, Illinois.
Wow.
And for the longtime Chicago fans that might be on your show here right now, listening, watching, those that can remember the Ice Bowl in Green Bay where the Packers played the Cowboys and it was 13 below zero. It felt like that this morning when I was walking my dog. I felt like I was Bart Starr waiting to take the snap for a quarterback sneak. And my face was frozen within about, 30 seconds. And my dog, the funny thing is my dog, Dublin, who's right next to me here, she's a black lab. I let her out of the car and I thought, okay, we're going to go for a little walk, whatever this turns out to be. She got about 10 steps away from the car, turned around and said, nah, I don't think so. Back in the car. And that was that. But that was anyway. Good to be with you guys this morning.
Good to be with you too, John. So I was looking at the Hawks stats this morning.
Right.
And the one thing that jumped out at me last year to this year, the Hawks have improved by almost half a goal defensively.
Yeah.
Is that the most basic explanation for why the Hawks are in a better standings position and vying for a playoff spot this year.
Well, Dave, I think it's fair of you to point that out. That's part of it for sure. And I think that's a function of, the goaltending that we're getting from our goaltenders, Spencer Knight and Arvid Soderblom, who doesn't get a lot of credit, but he's the backup goaltender, and many nights he plays like a starter. So there's strength at that position. Number two, the defense has been surprisingly good. It's a young defensive contingent. If you take the average age, if you take out Connor Murphy and Matt Grzelcyk, who are the two real veterans on that blue line core, you're looking at an average number that'll skew below the age of 25. And these guys have really stepped up. Wyatt Kaiser, for my money, has been the Blackhawks probably their best first or second defenseman of the bunch. I would put him in there. He is quietly having a career season. He makes smart decisions with the puck all the time. He takes these huge hits. I mean, hits that you would think would disable anybody. But he just bounces right back into the play, and then he makes a smart play in the next motion. We're also getting what I believe is a good, maybe to strong back-checking effort almost every game from our forwards. And shout out to Michael Pekka, former Frank Selke Trophy winner, two-time Frank Selke Trophy winner, for working with the forwards and getting them to understand defensive responsibilities and how that can contribute to the offensive attack. And then finally, really a lot of credit goes to Jeff Blashill, the head coach, who, as you guys know, was an assistant coach down in Tampa Bay. And through osmosis, he had to learn from the master, John Cooper, about how to orchestrate things. And he's done an outstanding job. Blash has, I mean, there have been times where, you know, the train goes off the tracks, so to speak, and you wonder how is he going to get them going again. And he always seems to do it. He's done a magnificent job. The Blackhawks right now, I heard them characterized last week as a box of chocolates. You guys remember that movie reference. And I think that's appropriate. I think on any given night, you kind of wonder what you're going to get. But for my money, they're a 500 hockey team, and they're going to take on a very good team tonight. Obviously, your Tampa Bay Lightning, best road team in the National Hockey League, at the United Center, coming off of one of their best wins in the season, down in Carolina, beating that team on home ice. And now they turn around and they have to come back and play that other great team from the Eastern Conference. So it's going to be a great challenge for them.
John, Dave and I have often talked about teams that maybe they go through a period of time, they don't make the playoffs, but they have to hit on their draft picks. Younger players really have to come up and produce.
Right.
Do you feel like the Blackhawks are on their way in terms of doing that, developing those young players and getting them up here collectively, or do you feel like there's still some swings and misses when it comes to that aspect of the organization?
I think they've had more hits than misses. That's how I believe. Kyle Davidson, Norm McIver, excuse me, and the hockey ops guys, I think they've done a really good job of drafting and developing in the last few years. It's a process that, as you guys know, it takes a little while, you know, and sometimes you get lucky. You get a guy like Frank Nazar right out of college who joins the NHL, and he's a good player. Same with Connor Bedard. Joins the NHL at the age of 18, he's a good player. But then there are other guys that you draft and you develop that are second, third, even fourth round picks. And in time, they may crack the NHL lineup. But the good thing for the Blackhawks, really the good news if you're a Blackhawks fan, is that the pipeline is rich. This is not a bereft pipeline like some teams have. You know, like when let's say teams that are competing for a Stanley Cup, and I'm not going to name any, but you guys probably know what I'm talking about. There are NHL teams that are in position that with a player or two could put themselves into that realm where they can compete for a Stanley Cup, right? But they don't have anything to trade. Conversely, the Blackhawks have tons to trade to put themselves into that position, but they're not at that point yet where they need to, let's say, send away a couple of prospects in order to get that player or those players to put them over the top for a playoff run. So I know I kind of went around the barn to answer your question there, but my belief is that with the way that they've patiently developed these prospects and the way that they've patiently integrated them into the lineup, I feel like they're in position now where one or two more drafts will secure them for the next 10 years as a good hockey team. I think there's a lot coming. Anton Frandell is going to join this team later in the season. He's probably the top star in that Swedish league. He was the top player in the World Junior Championship Series, the MVP. He was the Blackhawks' first draft pick from last year. He's going to join the team, as I said, late in the season. There are a number of other prospects that will come and play. By the end of the season, we're really going to see what's kind of on the come for this team, really for the future. And I expect big things now in the next year as well, because this season, for my money, is a step up the ladder for this team. They're growing. They're finding out what they are. Obviously, at the trade deadline, if you're a 500 hockey team, you're probably going to be moving some guys. And I think that might be happening. We may be seeing the last games of some of the veteran players on this team. And that'll hurt me personally because I've gotten to know them and form relationships with them. But it's the reality of hockey. And you do that to strengthen your organization and give the other guy a chance to win a Stanley Cup. So things are very exciting here in Chicago. It's a lot of fun going to Blackhawk games again. They're no longer and I will never call them a doormat, but they kind of seemed like that the last couple of years. And so it's been fun to be around.
You know, John, the Hawks would be in a much more advantageous standings position if not for December. December was 3-9-2, and the injuries to Bedard and Nazar overlapped. We heard Jeff Blashill talk about the impact Bedard has had on the Hawks after he got hurt. He's a look at our record since he got hurt. How much of that dip in December was due to just you're missing a couple of key guys off the roster?
I think it was directly proportional to it, Dave. Losing Bedard, as you said, that really hurt. In that game in St. Louis, that last faceoff, Braden Shen, I heard you guys talking a few minutes earlier about this. Braden Shen just made a hockey play. I mean, you could get angry with what he did, that his maneuver injured your top star, your top player. You could get angry about that and seek some kind of retribution, but I think it's kind of pointless. He just made a smart play. And Connor was thinking, go forward with the face-off and just fire it right on goal, because I think there was maybe 1.2 seconds left. As it was, Tyler Bertuzzi got a good shot on goal, but Connor went down, and I think the injury, Dave, I heard you talking, separated shoulder. I don't think it was a separation. I think it might have been a subluxation, which is a little bit different. But they take a long time to heal from. More to your point, in December, yeah, without Connor Bedard, you could tell there was a drop-off. But from that came strength, team strength, because the team learned to win games without Connor Bedard. Then when Connor came back, well, now you've got that basis, that foundation, along with Connor's contributions, and then Frank Nazar coming back as he did last night. We're seeing the team not quite in high gear, but headed toward high gear. So I think that experience, that adversity for the team in the middle of the season is going to be beneficial in the long run.
John Wiedeman joining us here on Power Lunch on Lightning Radio. You mentioned Bedard, John. Clearly disappointment, I'm sure, not being able to make Team Canada, although that is a deep, deep roster.
Yeah.
How has he been able to kind of just come to terms, I guess, with that potentially? And do you think he can use that as adding fuel to the fire for the rest of the year?
I definitely think he'll do that. And I also think that Connor's the kind of a kid that he sees the big picture. He's not the immediate gain kind of a guy. He's a really good team guy. I'm proud of Connor. I mean, that sounds a little condescending. I don't mean to, because he's not my son. But having gotten to know him here in the last couple of years, he went from being a kid that was scared to talk to anybody, I mean, except, to do interviews, to this kid that's really gone a long way and really matured and come along as a hockey player. Was he disappointed by not being named onto Team Canada? I'm sure he was. But I know that he's realistic enough to know that by being snubbed or being not taken on the team, that can actually work to his advantage. If he doesn't play in the Olympics, yeah, that's going to kind of suck for him. But at the same time, he's also going to get the benefit of some rest during that time. And at the tail end of that, he's going to come back a stronger, healthier player. And if that means that the stretch run from that point to the end of the season is one where he can help propel the Blackhawks into the playoffs, and the math is totally against the Blackhawks right now to make the playoffs, but at least they're in position. I think for Connor Bedard, I think that's a growth kind of a situation. And he knows that he's young enough that there are going to be future opportunities. So I believe it's not the most devastating thing to ever happen to him in his career. He's going to get stronger from it. And in some way, he's going to benefit. And the next time that that opportunity comes around, I think he's going to be there.
John, last one for me. You've been an iconic voice in Chicago through the 3 cups in 6 years. And I was recapping your trajectory through. We met in the minors many years ago, but you were in Philly, you were with the Islanders, and then you got to Chicago. What was your first year in Chicago? And, how soon after your arrival did the team really start to pick up? It seemed to me that you arrived right around the same time as Taves and Kane. Am I remembering that right?
That's correct. Yeah. Dave, you're too kind, by the way. By the way, for the viewers and listeners, I should mention, Dave and I go back to the days of the American Hockey League in the 90s. Dave was in Hershey, did an outstanding job with the Hershey Bears, and made his way to the National Hockey League, and he earned it, folks. This is a man that's paid his dues, and I'm one broadcaster that can appreciate when I see another young broadcaster pay his dues in the minors with low pay, riding the buses, long hours. Dave, you know where I'm going with this because we live it. But to see a guy like that get to the National Hockey League, it warms my heart. And I've known several, and Dave is among that. But your question.
And you were in Worcester.
That's right. Yeah.
Some shorter trips from Worcester to. You had some long trips too.
Yeah. With 6 hours between the cities. And I always liked going to Hershey because they had that great hot chocolate, man. I mean, that just warmed me right up. But your question was about, me and my career. Well, I don't like to really talk about my career, except that I've just been exceedingly fortunate because along the way, I've met some great people. You mentioned Worcester, Dave, Jimmy Roberts, greatest guy I ever met in the game. I met Bobby Orr, Gordie Howe, Wayne Gretzky, Mario Lemieux, Martin Essier, on and on and on. Jimmy Roberts stands out as the greatest guy I ever met in the game of hockey. And it's for all the reasons that I hold in my heart. I'm not going to necessarily go through them because we don't have time. But those were 2 of the best years I ever spent in the game of hockey. And eventually, my career path, by good fortune, I ended up here in Chicago, the place where I always wanted to be. And it was the job I never thought I would get because Pat Foley was the voice of this team for the longest time. And other broadcasters around hockey, they're looking at the Chicago Blackhawks situation. They're going, yeah, I kind of don't think I got a shot at that. Foley's been there for 30 years. I see him working another 30. So think about some other team. Well, lo and behold, the job comes open in 2006. And I was with the Islanders at the time. And my wife was pregnant with our second child. And we had kind of comfortable on Long Island. We liked our house. We liked our situation. But when the Blackhawks job came open, I turned to my wife, Kelly, and I said, if I could get that job in Chicago, I'd be working for Mr. Wirtz. And Mr. Wirtz is one of the most loyal people in the business. And if you work for him, you keep your nose clean and be honest and work hard, you can work for him the rest of your life. And that's job security. That's family security. And, it was hard for her to make that decision to accompany me. But like the good woman she is, she supported my wishes. And we moved here to Chicago in 2006. Now, the 2006-07 season, the Blackhawks were a last place team. And I'm going to share a quick story with you and your listeners, Dave. Do you remember and you can see this clip on YouTube, Patrick Stefan for the Dallas Stars. They were playing the Edmonton Oilers. Patrick Stefan had an open net to shoot the puck in to put the game away for Dallas. I don't know what happened. Maybe he hit a bad patch of ice, but he mishandled the puck.
Yeah.
The goal line.
I remember.
Picked up that puck, raced around the left wing, moved down and scored, and Edmonton won that game. And it was because of that point differential that the Blackhawks were in the position that they were, so that when the lottery balls fell, they got number 1. They got the first pick in the draft. First pick in the draft, Patrick Kane. That was 2007. The year before, the third pick in the draft, they had drafted Jonathan Toews. And in the 2007-08 season, things started to really come together. You could see that team headed in the right direction. Dennis Savard was the coach at the time. He was replaced by Joel Quenneville early in the 08-09 season. And I'm telling you, Dave, the ride was one I never expected in my life, but so happy to have been a part of.
John, before we let you go, this is the last question. What do you just make of all of the closeness, the parity in today's game? I mean, it may be simple that it's a lot of good young players coming up, and maybe the cap is doing its job. Maybe it's a combination of that. But what do you make of all this?
I'm happy about it. I know Commissioner Bettman really wanted to see the league achieve parity, and I think we almost have completely. There are a couple of teams that are at the bottom in each conference, but it seems like they're not even out of it. And I love the fact that if you take a look at the standings, you see that there are probably no fewer than 6 teams vying for that last playoff spot, the 2 that might occupy the last playoff spots, and then the 4 or 5 teams below that. And that's where the Blackhawks are. They're in that pack of teams that's going to battle for that last playoff spot. Joel Quenneville, the Blackhawks old head coach, used to call that the hornet's nest. He used to say, you don't want to be down in that hornet's nest because you never get out. And he's right, because those teams tend to cannibalize each other for points, and you never crawl through and get to the last spot unless you go on an unbelievable run like the Lightning have. But I love the fact that on any given night, any team in the NHL can beat any other team. Take a look at the Colorado Avalanche. How long was it before they lost a game in regulation at home? It took them into, I believe, the month of December. Yeah. And, lo and behold, I think Nashville was the team that did it to them. Mm-hmm. And Nashville was a team that was at the time outside of the playoffs. So I like that kind of parity. I think that gives value to the tickets that people buy. And you guys know how the ticket prices have gone up in the last couple of years. And, if you're a fan and you love your team, it's hard to be a fan sometimes when you look at the prices and you see what they are. But I think there's real commitment by the league to make sure that the game is in the best shape it's ever been. It's exciting. Every game is contested. Every team has a chance to win every game on every night. And I really like that. I like where the NHL is right now.
Wonderful. Well, we always appreciate catching up with you. Stay warm and have a good call tonight.
Thank you, John.
Thank you very much, guys. Great being on with you.
Yep. We always appreciate the time.
All right.
Always appreciate it. All right. There he goes. Great guy.
He is a great broadcaster.
Really?
I mean, I don't know how many fans who are watching and listening to our show tune in to out of town or maybe in town. Maybe people listening in Chicago. If you have a chance to hear John Wiedeman call a game, you are in for a treat. He's outstanding.
It's always good too when they're good human beings.
Yeah.
Say what you want.
Well, I don't know that I've ever met somebody who's not a good human being who's been a colleague of mine, honestly. I mean, if they're not, I'm not seeing it. So
would you say it's a pretty, all things considered, a pretty close-knit fraternity between you guys, the radio broadcasters?
Well, there's usually collaboration. I mean, even just, you heard us ask John questions and he filled us in on what's going on with the Hawks. I mean, I'm having those conversations often, with the opposing broadcaster, just seeing them.
Sure.
And vice versa. So, we all help each other and, we want everyone to do well. Yeah, right.
Right.
So,
and like
there are so few of us, honestly. I mean, relative to other professions, you're talking about Major League Hockey game broadcasters.
Yeah.
How many of them are there out there? Play-by-play and analysts. I mean, not that many. So, you share something in common, and I think, we all have a level of respect for one another and, are agreeable. Like, we are agreeable. I said that when Doug Plagans comes on. It's like the Lightning and Panthers on the ice, there's not a lot of congeniality there, right? And, yes, maybe Sam Bennett at the Four Nations was fine with Hagel and Cirelli and vice versa and all of that. And Matthew Tkachuk was fine with Jake Gensel for Team USA. But when you're competing, it's different. That is not the case. Like, I have a very good relationship with Doug and with Randy Moeller and Steve Goldstein. And I've known them for a decade or more. So it predates the intensity of this rivalry. And those relationships don't really...
That being said, you want to beat...
Don't really get affected.
That being said, you want the Lightning...
Well, on the ice, sure. You want the Lightning to beat the Panthers, and they feel the same way in the opposite direction. 100%. But there's a professionalism that does not allow,
Sure.
Those, we understand that we have personal biases, right?
Sure.
If the team isn't paying us directly, we're getting paid by somebody who's affiliated with the team, whether it's the network. So, and even the national people, like, if I see Sean McDonough or Bob Wischusen there for ESPN, but, Kenny's a little different for TNT because Kenny is doing a team as well. Mm-hmm. But, like Wischusen is popping in. He's pretty well prepared. I mean, I've gotten to know him the last few years since he started doing NHL games, and he's done a fair number of Lightning games. So he usually comes in pretty on top of things, but it is helpful, to him, I think, if I'm like, hey, watch out for this, or this is what's been going on with the team, because, they don't have the benefit of being in the weeds like we are. They're parachuting in to see two teams that maybe they haven't seen in a while. Now, I think Washington is doing the game tonight. So he just did the game last night with Chicago and Carolina. So he's just seen Chicago. But how long has it been since he'd done a Lightning game? Well before Christmas, I'm sure. So you can do all the prep that you want. You can try and catch up, watch video, but
sure,
you're still a little behind the eight ball.
Can drop some nuggets in that
drop some nuggets.
By talking
they have
to
a
you
whole
guys,
crew too that's digging up stuff that honestly probably a lot of it I don't even have, but they have the benefit of graphics. They can put stuff up. We're an audio medium. So speaking of which, tonight I have Chief with me for the studio. 2 studio games this weekend for me.
He'll be there with you.
So yep,
be nice.
So good to work a game with Chief.
Love it. What's Steve say? It's our first national broadcast
in over 2 months. Yeah.
Wow.
I know we had Washington earlier this year. He did the game between the Lightning and Washington at the beginning of the year. Because I remember talking to him about faceoffs. Because the Lightning come off that game in Boston, which they won, but they were very poor in the circle. So I'm like, watch for this tonight. And actually that night, the Lightning lost in overtime, but they did okay in the faceoff circle. To the point that the next time I saw him, he's like, thanks for that tip, but they actually did okay in the faceoff circle. I mean, it was like 50-50, right? But that Boston game, they got absolutely schooled. What were they, like 20% for the game or something like that? So Riley might have had his worst game ever in the NHL in the faceoff circle in that game. But that was kind of a little bit of a storyline going into the next game. It's like, how are they going to do, right?
Tonight, partner, enjoy some Refrom. Not you, because you'll be calling a game. Smooth, versatile, now pouring at Benchmark International Arena. Order a Tropical Wave or a Lightning Mule, and taste why fans are switching. Refrom is a premium craft Florida local rum built on authenticity, quality, and easy drinkability. Ask for Refrom by name. Go Bolts. Enjoy responsibly. All right, let's get to a couple of questions before we do.
I just want to mention one other thing, which John didn't address when I asked about their improvement defensively.
Yeah.
So they're still not like top 10, but they were near the bottom last year. Their goals for is about the same, right where it was last year. They've improved defensively. They've gone from about 3.5 goals a game to about 3 goals a game. They are the number 1 team in the NHL on penalty killing. Number 1. So if you can keep the puck out of your net while shorthanded, that will help your defensive numbers. That is a little bit offset by the fact that and their power play is pretty good too. Like they're over 20% on the power play. The problem on special teams for the Hawks, special teams differential. What does that mean? It's not just how many times short and how many times on the power play. It's minutes. Minus 50 minutes on that differential. They have been shorthanded almost a full game. Can we say almost a full game if you're 50 minutes? Almost a full game, they have been shorthanded more than on the power play. Now, the one caveat there is if you're killing off penalties, you're shorthanded for the full 2 minutes. If you're scoring the power play, you're not on the power play for a full 2 minutes. But still, minus 50 is like eye-popping. So they probably could help themselves by having that differential be a little smaller. But when they are going short, they're doing the job. And that will help your goals against. So that's been a part of it too. He mentioned Wyatt Kaiser. I love this guy in the first meeting. He jumped out at me and was like, this guy's turned into a really high-end player. So I was curious to hear that John said that that's been the case this year, like one of their top 1 or 2 defensemen.
All good nuggets.
Yeah.
Which we love. I want to get to this question, and this is Eric. Mission Greg, don't change your interview style or line of questioning based on interesting commentary from your guest yesterday. Don't overthink it. You do you. And you guys rock.
Yeah, I haven't changed after all these years, so I'm probably not changing anyway. But you're a little more succinct than me. But I think you have more experience asking these interview questions.
I definitely do. I enjoy that part of it, for sure. I always like that. Michael says, when Hetty and Mac come back, we will have one of the talented D-corps in the league. What kind of minutes do good players need to perform their best? Top D-men seem to play in the 25 to 28-minute range.
That's a little bit of a loaded question because some defensemen, it depends on the defenseman. Darren Radish clearly seems to play better with more, right? Some players, and this is coming from coaches, the coach feels that if you give the player, like at a certain threshold, the player's effectiveness starts to go down if you're playing them too much. So the top defenseman, I want to say Makar is the leader. I can actually look it up. Leader in average ice time per game. So usually, and they're defensemen, because defensemen play more than forward. So I'm going to look it up. I'm going to tell you who these players are and try and explain why they're up where they're at. Actually, Makar is 7th, so I was way off. Quinn Hughes, number 1. Zach Werenski, number 2. Miro Heiskanen, number 3. What do these 3 guys especially have in common with a lot of the other top guys? They see a lot of power play time. So their minutes are going to get elevated with time in the power play. Time in the power play is less stressful than any other situation for a defenseman. Being in the power play as a defenseman is less stressful than 5-on-5, and it's certainly less stressful than shorthanded, right? So if you're getting your minutes bumped up by, and most of these guys are like averaging about 3 minutes per game on the power play based on how many power plays you get, how long the power plays last. If you score in a power play, it's not going to last as long. So if you're averaging 3 minutes a game short or power play time, that's Ovechkin is going to be averaging, because he stays out for the full 2 minutes, he's going to be higher than that. But that tells you if they're playing about 26 minutes a game, take off those 3 power play minutes. Now you're at 23. That's still in the high end, but they're getting up to the upper echelon. What that fan had, 25 to 28. If you're in the 25 to 28 range, I can almost guarantee you that you are getting power play time.
Yep.
If you're getting 0 power play time and you're having to play 28 minutes of hard hockey every single night, not that playing on the power play isn't hard, but you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, yes, you can allow a shorthanded goal, but
sure,
most of the time you are not under stress on the power play in terms of body checks and blocking shots and defending, chasing pucks in your own end, getting stuck out there for an extended shift. The power play is a cakewalk compared to that. So keep that in mind. Very rare for somebody to be in that range near the top if they aren't getting supplemental minutes added to their total through power play time, which they earn. You want these players out on the power play. And then there's some players that play in the power play but probably would not benefit from playing the 23 minutes of non-power play time too. So
wonderful.
Yeah, that's how I'd answer that question.
It's a good point. Partner, I will talk to you tonight. 7 o'clock game, 6:30 pregame. And we'll have lots to discuss on Monday because we'll have back-to-back games to cover.
Yes, we will.
Should be a lot of fun. So thank you. Great job.
Yeah.
As always.
Thanks to John Wiedeman, too.
Yep. He was great. Steve Versnick, thank you. Jared Johnson as well. And for everybody who listened, I am Greg Linnelli. You've been listening to Power Lunch on Lightning Radio.